Good morning. I'm Dan Vaughn. I share the leadership in today's service with Reverend Kathy Ellis, and we want to welcome you to celebrate in the transformative power of our religious community. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. I do want to also mention that today all are invited for extra snacks, and there you go, there's good enough reason to go. Whatever it is you're doing, extra snacks, and an info cafe on our capital campaign Operation Next Gen. That will be at noon. We will provide an overview of the process and where we are in it. And members will be able to ask questions at that time. The Info Cafe will also appear on Zoom. So, again, I welcome you, and we're very glad you're here.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
TV or what? Thank you. Before we light our chalice and settle into worship this morning, I'd like to thank the tech team and Operation Next, well, not for that, but for everything else that they do. For the fact that we have this 75-inch monitor, which to my eyes is very clear and easy to read. Is it so in the back of the room?
Yes.
Yes. So we're experimenting with that. We are also experimenting with the logo, as the logo has not been completely approved by the committee yet. So let us know. Please give feedback on all of these things. Now, I have words for us from one of the foremost Unitarian humanists of the 20th century, John Hassler Dietrich. This is from a piece he wrote called Do Humanists Worship? He said, we come together to worship in community. Worship has nothing to do with knowledge. Worship is an attitude of mind, an emotional response of awe and reverence. Reverence is that quality of admiration and devotion which seeks outward expression in the form of service. It is a quality of aspiration that leads one to strive for justice, mercy, and love. Worship can stir human emotion to the point where people will consecrate themselves to the development on this planet of a free and rich and full life. We light our chalice this morning in recognition that this worshiping community aspires to develop individual lives and to serve the world. UCH encourages, equips, and empowers.
During the song, I was thinking, well, maybe it's Sunday morning football? So good morning. Today's story is about Abner Kneeland, the last man jailed for blasphemy. So in 1820, Abner Kneeland was the very first minister of the congregation in Philadelphia where our very own Reverend Kathy served. The church was then called the Second Universalist Church of Philadelphia. It's had several names in the last 200 years and is now called the Unitarian Universalist of Mount Airy. He worked in Philadelphia for 7 years and helped 2 Universalist churches to grow. Abner Kneeland had a lot of energy, and he worked hard, and he loved to think about things and to argue. One time, he had a public debate with a man from another church. They debated for 4 whole days. Afterwards, what they said was published in a book, and the book was 336 pages long. Besides working for 2 other churches, he also published a newspaper in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Universalist magazine. He put together a book called the Philadelphia Hymn Book. He helped his wife, who had a store where she sold hats and cloth, and he was a government inspector of hats. So I looked it up because I thought that was really interesting, and as you might imagine, there are no longer inspector of hats. 'Cause I was going to apply. He was a very busy man. So Reverend Kneeland was also the last man in the United States who was put in jail for blasphemy. The little ones, do you know what blasphemy is? Okay. Adults, what is blasphemy? Saying bad things about God. Yes, very good, thank you. It can also be cursing or, as Kate just said, disrespectful to what other people think is about God. Abner Kneeland was put in jail for 2 months, 60 days, because people thought that he said he did not believe in God. He didn't even say that. What he was trying to say is what he did believe, which was that God was in nature and in the universe and everything. But that wasn't the kind of God that the judges believed in, and so he was put in jail. Some people thought that the real reason that that they were punishing him was because a lot of people were listening to what he had to say. He was saying things that a lot of people at that time, now more than 200 years ago, were wrong and dangerous. He believed that women and men were equal and should have equal rights. He believed that African Americans and white people were of equal value and should have equal rights. He thought that it was fine for white people and black people to love each other and to get married. He believed a lot of things that we believe today, but at that time, a lot of people did not believe. What's important to remember about Abner Kneeland is that he was not afraid to speak his truth. He was a man who thought it was really, really important to pay attention to his own integrity and to speak up honestly about what you believe and to change your mind when you learn new things. And as you know, that is what we try to do in this congregation. And now we will sing our children to their class.
Yeah.
this is not the thing I intended to say at the first. I don't believe in God. This is coming from a man who preached the gospel for 30 plus years in a number of congregations. And I've never said that publicly to a group of people before. I don't know what spiritual maturity is. As I looked at the theme and thought, I know I ain't got it. I can look at people, I can look at some of you folks and see spiritual maturity. I don't see it in myself. I don't know what it is in me. I'm too quick to laugh at jokes about a certain orange-haired fellow. I'm way too quick to curse. And I certainly am quite given to moods. Spiritual maturity to me seems like it should mean some level of self-control and just having things worked out and figured out. And for 30 plus years, I had everything worked out and figured out except that I didn't. And all the questions that I kept pushing back and not answering finally came flooding into my life within a couple of years. Although there was a slow evolution out of certain concepts. And I don't know, some people would say I wasn't spiritually maturing, I was going the opposite direction. But looking back on it, I think for me, and I don't answer for you, by the way, I think for me, I was spiritually maturing. But at almost 69 years old, I know one thing. Everything is far more complex than we think it is. And nothing is as easy as you think it is when you're cradling yourself in firm conviction and faith. And one thing I really hold on to, in fact I have most of my life, I realize now, one thing I've held on to, and that is, just as Corey said, I wasn't expecting her to say it, but I've held on to the fact that I need to be open to change. It is so easy, especially you guys in my age group and a little older, we know it's really hard to change. It's really nice to hold on to what we've been comfortable with and want things to not, be how they seem to be changing. But the best thing in my life, as far as what I'm thinking about, what I'm living, the best thing in my life right now is striving to be open to the differences and changes that are coming about. I get kind of annoyed. Every once in a while, I see on Facebook a post that talks about, oh, the good old days. We didn't need no seat belts, and we didn't need no, car seats, and, blah, blah, blah. And we didn't need safe playground equipment, and we survived. And my thought is, yeah, you survived. Those who didn't survive can't talk for themselves. And we need to be willing to change to make things better. And that's what I got to say about spiritual maturity. We're in a group of people, a community that embraces the idea of change. We don't always live it out very well, but we embrace the idea. And I just encourage you that we help one another to be open to that as we grow. And that will lead us to spiritual maturity.
Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth.
Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery.
A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief.
Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away the faults.
Let no one fear for the truth that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief.
The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It is not shaken by the testing.
For truth, if it be truth, arises from each testing stronger, more secure.
Those that would silence doubt are filled with fear. Their houses are built on shifting sands.
But those who fear not doubt and know its use are founded on rock.
They shall walk in the light of growing knowledge. The work of their hands shall endure.
Therefore, let us not fear doubt, but let us rejoice in its help.
It is to the wise as a staff to the blind. Doubt is the attendant of truth.
So, I'm continuing our our October theme of Unitarian and Universalist heritage. And I'm really afraid I'm trying to do too much and too much history in this sermon. So I'm going to just talk about my main points first. That's what speech people always used to tell you to do anyway. Do that and then do it again and so forth. So, first, about humanism. The human touch can light the flame, we sang. The human touch loves faith we show. It is about what we as humans do, what we do that matters. So how do we show our love and care? How do we show our welcome here in this congregation? Unitarian Universalists are all humanists. In that, we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all human beings. We believe that human life matters, that what we do matters, and that what we learn from our experience, and that matters. Humans have both the capacity to learn, to act, and to change things, and we have the responsibility to do so. We acknowledge that humans are part of the natural world. Indeed, many of us find the sacred in the natural world. We know that science is important and that our understandings, our faith, changes as we learn more about our world. As the choir sang and Dan said, now is always the time to be open to learning more and to change. Now, as Unitarian Universalists, we are not secular humanists. There is a secular American Humanist Association you can check out and learn what they say. We are religious humanists, because if you are a Unitarian Universalist, you are here participated in a religious community. I want to say humanism is not the same thing as atheism, which some people have thought. And atheism is not the same as humanism. Humanism is what I was describing about the belief that human beings matter, that what we do matters, that our experience matters. You could be an atheist humanist, you could be a theist humanist. Those are two different things. I want to say, and you probably know this already, Unitarian Universalism is not an easy religion. It's not, Dan was talking about, although I don't think it was easy to tamp down questions for 30 years, nevertheless, the answers that he was given were supposed to be easy. And Unitarian Universalism is not that way. As Reverend Sandra said last week, Unitarians expected us to grow our character and our soul, and we still kind of expect that. I loved Channing's words. I don't know if Sandra said this or not, but Channing talked about how we have to have self-cultivation. We cultivate our soul. And Sandra lifted up Emerson's writing that each generation must renew the life of religion. We must each have our own experience of the sacred, of the divine, however we define it. I would say that we are all spiritual beings. It could require some discussion to figure out what that means, but I believe that the spirit is just a natural part of us. So this really does ask a lot of us. It requires this, we pay attention. We pay attention to those internal voices and experiences, and we pay attention to other people and the world. Really pay attention. And that we be willing to change throughout our lives. I'm not entirely sure either what spiritual maturity is, but I've seen spiritual growth and experienced it, and I expect you have too. The problem for Unitarian Universalism isn't theism or atheism. Rather, it's dogmatism. Whenever anyone says that they have the one and only truth for everybody and always, well, we're in trouble. That's dogmatism, and it's dangerous. You can be a dogmatic theist. You can be a dogmatic atheist. Here's how John Hassler Dietrich put it in 1931. Now, I have to say that the humanists of the 30s, they wrote a lot, they were prolific and good, and they were also very optimistic. Anyway, Dietrich said, "Of course, all religious institutions believe themselves to be interested in the truth. So the real difference between this organization, the church he served, and other religious bodies lies in the fact that these others believe they have already found the truth and have formulated certain statements of faith, while we believe that the universe is constantly unfolding itself to the inquiring mind. We put the emphasis on the method of discovery, being always on the lookout for larger and clearer views of the truth. What seems essential to us is not any transient form of opinion, but the method of truth-finding. This is the optimistic part, by which progress is always continuous. And I might say the method of searching and seeking by which we may grow. Again, we are called to be awake to our own experience, to pay attention to our own spiritual experience, whether you call it spiritual or not, still to pay attention. Sandra talked about her drive into church last week and seeing a rainbow, which I understand some others saw. That is an experience of awe and reverence, and that is a spiritual experience. But it required that she pay attention to it, which she did, and some of you did as well. So it's a lot. It's a lot to be a Unitarian Universalist, really. Luckily, we do not have to be perfect, ever. And we are loved and held in love as we are. So this morning I have two historical examples, one from the 19th century and one from the 20th century, of men who demonstrate the openness to change and growth throughout their lives. Abner Kneeland, and we heard a little bit of him already, and John Hassler Dietrich. Now, both of these men have Pennsylvania connections, which I found interesting. Now, Kneeland was in Philadelphia. Now, he wasn't from Pennsylvania. Dietrich was, and I'll get to him in a bit. But Kneeland is thought to be a forerunner of religious humanism. He wrote, "When men shall discover that nothing can be known beyond this life, and that there is no rational ground for any such belief, then they will begin to think more of improving the condition of the human species," which he did think a lot about. Kneeland was converted from the baptism of his youth by reading, and he learned from Father Hosea Ballou. He was such a well-known Universalist, Hosea Ballou, that everyone called him Father. He also did have a lot of kids, but... Now, Kneeland seems to have had an unending search, thirst for knowledge and understanding. He taught himself Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. He translated the New Testament from Greek and published it, setting his own type as he did so. His search led him to question and keep questioning. When his first wife and child died, and he was actually married 4 times and had 12 children, no divorces, bad luck, I think. He had great doubts about religion when his first wife and child died. And Father Ballou advised him that he needed to experience humility and prayer. And Kneeland did do that and returned to the Universalist ministry temporarily. As we might guess from the 4 days of debate, Kneeland did really love to argue. He seems to both flawed, as well are we all, and brilliant. He seems to have been loving, and some people found him as an inspired speaker, but others just disparaged him. He argued a lot. His behavior was seen as erratic. People were hurt by his sudden departures from churches, from cities, from the denomination. So just before that blasphemy trial, and really the reason why they decided to try him, and I think he was the example of why they should never do that again, because it did never happen again. Kneeland rejected the Universalists publicly and dramatically. He embarrassed them, and I think they just wanted to forget him. But again, what Kneeland believed and advocated for isn't controversial now, among us at least. And we can admire his great intelligence and desire to learn and his evolving sense of what is true. When he first came to Philadelphia in 1818, he claimed the right to interpret the Universalist articles of faith, which the 19th century Universalists had, and the scripture. He claimed the right to interpret them as he saw them. And he preached a Unitarian Universalism. That is, he didn't preach the Trinity, which many of the Universalists in 19th century did. After Kneeland left Philadelphia, in some sort of dispute, I think, he briefly served Universalist congregations in New York City. He first went to the Prince Street congregation. And when they learned fully what he believed, it split the congregation in half. And so, with some of the members, they began the Second Universalist Society. But he soon offended them too, as he continued evolving out of 19th century Universalists. So here's part of what happened. In New York, he met the free thinkers Robert Owen and Francis Wright. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they advocated for a radical restructuring of the American economy, for equality of sexes and races, for birth control, for interracial marriage, and for divorce. Remember, this is the 1820s. They critiqued capitalism and organized religion. Now, in 1829, Fanny Wright spoke at the Second Universalist Society of New York City, and that was really shocking, because Wright advocated sexual freedom for women. No one else in New York City would give her a space to speak, but Kneeland did. And this seems to have been his final break, really, with Universalism. He went to Boston and established the first society of inquirers. And he lectured to thousands, railing against the conservative effects of religion, for abolition, for a free national education system, for equality, for interracial marriage, for birth control, for divorce. We're now in the 1830s. He dramatically criticized the Bible as having no rational proof, and some stories say he threw it on the floor. They did dramatic things like that in the 19th century. After he was released from those 60 days in jail for blasphemy, Kneeland seemed subdued, and he seemed concerned about the suffering that his family had experienced. He and others decided to start a free-thinking community in Iowa where there would be no religious institutions. So at 64, he moved there to Salubria. They had some interesting names, too. It was known as a place where people read a lot of books. Kneeland died suddenly in 1844, probably of a stroke. But his influence still lasts. He was committed to growth, honesty, integrity. He was a forerunner, as we said, of religious humanism. He left a legacy of a free pulpit, the right of conscience, love and care for all humanity, and a Unitarian theology. In his philosophical creed of 1833, Kneeland declared, "I believe that God and nature, so far as we can attach any rational idea to either, are synonymous terms. Hence, I am not an atheist, but a pantheist. That is, instead of believing there is no God, I believe that in the abstract, all is God. It is in God that we live, move, and have our being. And the whole duty of man consists in living as long as he can and in promoting as much happiness as he can while he lives." I think I mentioned before when I was talking about Universalists, they talked about happifying. They believed in being happy and promoting happiness. Now, in the 20th century, John Hassler Dietrich was another man who was always learning and growing throughout his life. When he died at age 80, he was learning Italian and reading Sartre. Dietrich first named religious humanism and was one of the signers of the first Humanist manifesto. He wasn't humble, I will say. He said, "I was the first minister in the Unitarian Church, if not in America, who frankly and publicly embraced this form of religion, humanism that is, making it the basis of my regular pulpit teaching." For 22 years, Dietrich was the minister of the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, which became the flagship humanist congregation. Now, I became more interested in Dietrich's early history when I learned that he was from central Pennsylvania. He was the youngest of 4 brothers, born in Willow Hill, Franklin County. Have you ever been on the turnpike and seen the exit for Willow Hill? And what do you see around that exit? Country, mountains. Yeah, Franklin County is today quite conservative. It's actually where Doug Mastriano comes from, too. It's conservative politically, socially, and culturally. As an adult, Dietrich came to be considered too religiously radical even for some Unitarians. And I wondered how that boy, from a Swiss-German farming family, grew to be an important liberal thinker. As a boy and a young man, John valued the intellect. He spent a lot of time alone because he was the shepherd, cowherd for the family. He valued intellect, freedom, and education. And when he was 15, the family moved 4 miles away from the Mercersburg Academy. Now, I don't know if you've heard of that, but Mercersburg Academy is still a respected, well-regarded prep school. He was 4 miles away. He earned his tuition money through farm work, walked 4 miles each way to the academy, graduated with 4 years' work in 3 years, and was the valedictorian of the class of 1896. Yeah, I think he had a lot of energy. I think that both these men had a lot of energy. So after completing a degree at Franklin and Marshall, he saved the money to attend the Reformed Seminary, which is now the Lancaster Theological Seminary. Now, Dietrich really valued learning from a liberal church history professor, but he was disappointed when the professor both highly praised a paper John had written for the graduation ceremony and told him to water it down. He said his liberal ideas would offend people at the graduation ceremony. So Dietrich was ordained as a Reformed minister. I don't know if any of you know much about the Reformed Church. I don't really, but he described it as kind of liberal but Orthodox Christianity. So he was ordained in the Reformed tradition, and he went to serve a congregation in Pittsburgh. Now, everywhere that Dietrich went, his congregations grew. He was apparently a wonderful and charismatic speaker. And he continued growing and learning, leading him away from the Reformed Church and to the Unitarian Church. The Orthodox Reformed ministers charged him with heresy for denying the virgin birth, the deity of Jesus, and the infallibility of the Bible. He was defrocked by them in 1911. And I know that Sandra did talk about heresy last week. We are the proud descendants of heretics. It's good to be a heretic because it means to think and to choose. It means really to be open. Well, I guess it doesn't have to mean that, but that's the idea anyway. So in 1916, Dietrich founded the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. Everywhere that he ministered, the congregations grew. 1,500 to 2,000 people came to his Sunday morning services in Minneapolis, and he reached still more people with the services on the radio. And he wrote a lot. Actually, Rachel showed me a book she has now that has some of his writings in it. And Dietrich said of himself, "Above all, I am interested in preaching. I entered the ministry because of my desire to be a preacher. I have always considered the pulpit a sacred space, which I entered with a spirit of reverence and a high sense of responsibility. I have always endeavored to make my preaching a clear revelation of the impact of a free mind on the most profound human problems and on the relations of human to the universe. To do less," he said, "would be to dishonor the intelligence and sincerity of my audiences." So he did want to learn to consider human problems, to consider solutions. He paid attention to the world and read voraciously. He preached about birth control in 1915, preached about evolution in 1916. He spoke against the United States entering World War I. He addressed anti-Semitism and Nazi persecution of Jews in 1931. He opposed capital punishment. He advocated educating people about sexuality, about relationship skills, and about parenting. And after his retirement, he continued to read and learn and think. Like I said, he was learning Italian. When I was a student at Meadville Lombard, I found in the wonderful old library sacks that they used to have in the old building they don't have anymore, just amazing dark dusty library space. But I found an unpublished, indeed it's marked unfinished paper from him called Thoughts on God. So it was written probably in the early mid-1950s before his death in 1957. And he said, "Some people seem surprised that my philosophy and religion have undergone modification, but to my mind, that is the most natural thing in the world. A mind that is static, a mind that never changes is static and crystallizes." So again, we're talking about being open to change and growth and learning. And he said about God at this point, he said, "Do not ask me to define it. I like to think of myself as both a theist and a humanist." So in his 70s and still learning, Dietrich remained hopeful. He wrote of his religion, and I hope that we can share at least in some of this. "At the heart of my religion, which is open to all the light that science can bring, is a spiritual reality, which is love and truth and freedom, and which, if universally recognized and accepted, would bind the whole world together in one humanity. And we would then have peace on earth and goodwill towards one another." So may we continue to grow and to learn from one another. May we be one as we seek, we love, we serve, and we work to build beloved community. Amen. Ashe. Beloved be. Blessed be. You are invited, as we do each week, to take a stone from the basket that Dan has at the back and to invest it with your energy, the energy of the sorrows that brought you dragging in or the joys that had you flying in, the energy of your concerns, your aspirations to send to the universe. Please go down the side aisles, up the center.
And a final stone for all that is on our hearts and minds. A sorrow about the world, which I think we all can share, and the discipline of hope that the Palestinians and Israelis will find a route to living together. Sometimes I include more in the worship service about the world. And sometimes, of late, the world feels too much with us, actually. And a joy, part sorrow, from the Kavanaghs. The joy that tomorrow is their 58th anniversary, but yes. But Nan is still at home fighting the germs that they got from the grandkids. And another joy that Jim Kavanaugh and Debbie Rehart walked with thousands of people in pink yesterday to make strides against breast cancer. Representing the Unistriders, is that right? Unistriders of UCH. I want to invite you to find a centered place. Maybe put your feet on the floor, because we've had a lot of words this morning, a lot of words from historical people. I want to invite us into a moment of meditative silence and find some peace together.
The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by us. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of October, we share the plate with Gather the Spirit for Justice. GTSFJ is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that brings together Allison Hill residents, area organizations, businesses, and churches to address issues of social justice and economic equity. If you wish to contribute online, just visit uchbg.org, homepage for options. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able. With gratitude, we receive these gifts and dedicate them to our shared work, serving human wholeness and welcoming the stranger, caring for our planet and upholding religious freedom, walking together always with love and compassion.
We extinguish our chalice with the words of our covenant, which I think are going to be up there. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Amen. May it be so. Go in peace, then. Go downstairs and hear from the Operation Next Generation.